Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer on the Foundry by Forge College. Look, if you survived our previous lesson on the foundations of dynamic load balancing, congratulations, you've definitely earned a breather. Today, we're shifting gears completely. We're diving into the NFTs and decentralized identity track to look at smart contract name awareness. Basically, how do we resolve ENS names right inside your contracts?
Think of this agenda as our engineering schematic for the day. We'll quickly cover our Welcome to ENS resolution, registry versus resolver, the namehash identifier, on-chain lookup flow, avoiding the zero address, and finally, implementing the code.
Okay, let's just get right to the core of it. How do we actually get our contracts to read human names? Because right now, smart contracts speak in hexadecimal strings, literally addresses that look like a cat just walked across your keyboard. Humans, on the other hand, speak in names, things like alice.eth. Bridging this massive gap between a beautiful human user experience and raw on-chain smart contract data using ENS, well, that's what makes Web3 actually usable for normal people.
Section 1. Registry versus resolver. We began our blueprint by looking at the two fundamental gears of the ENS machinery, and it's a brilliant division of labor. On the discovery side, we've got the registry. Think of the registry as a highly efficient, slightly bureaucratic operator that tells you exactly who owns what and, crucially, which filing cabinet you need to check. Then, on the storage side, you have the resolver. That is the actual filing cabinet. It holds the specific data you're looking for, like the real wallet address or text records. So the registry points the way, and the resolver actually hands over the goods.
Section 2. The namehash identifier.
Now, before we can ask this machinery for an address, we run into a bit of a formatting snag. Solidity contracts don't exactly speak English, so enter the namehash. This is a deterministic recursive hash specifically defined in EIP 137 that uniquely represents an ENS name as a bytes 32 node. And the key part is, it does this while preserving all those vital parent and child domain relationships. But here's the absolute crucial takeaway. Passing a pre-computed namehash from off-chain saves a ton of precious gas. And let's be real, in Web3, saving your users gas money is essentially a love language. You could compute it on-chain, sure, but calculating it off-chain is almost always the smarter, cheaper move.
Section 3. On-chain lookup flow. Let's see how these pieces come together into a practical mechanism for our smart contract. Just like tracing lines on a schematic, this simple three-step process perfectly mirrors human logic. Step 1, identify the name by getting the node or the namehash. Step 2, find the provider by asking the registry for the proper resolver. And Step 3, extract the data by asking that resolver for the address. It's identify, find, extract. A super logical, perfectly sequential progression. Check out how cleanly this maps out the absolute minimal external view calls our contract needs to execute this lookup. Starting right at the top row with the ENS registry, we pass in our bytes 32 node, and boom, we get back the address of the resolver. Moving down to the public resolver, we call address with that exact same node, and we get the resolved user address. We also have reverse resolvers down at the bottom that can actually map an address back to a human-readable string name. By keeping our interface this minimal and tight, we keep our contracts both gas-efficient and incredibly secure.
Section 4. Avoiding the zero address.
Speaking of security, any solid engineer knows you have to handle failure modes. In Web3, sending funds to a missing address is a catastrophic system failure. I mean, throwing money into a digital black hole where there's no customer service desk? Yeah, bad day for everyone. So read this quote carefully. Treat the zero address as missing data, not a benign default. Literally, when the registry or the resolver returns address 0, you must explicitly revert or fallback. Otherwise, you're inviting chaotic misconfigurations. If someone's name isn't set up right, or maybe it expired, do not just silently proceed. You absolutely have to stop the train right there.
Section 5. Implementing the code.
All right, time to translate this theoretical blueprint into a gas-efficient Solidity pattern that you can actually deploy. First things first, declare minimal interfaces. We're talking just IENS registry and iResolver. We only compile what we absolutely need. Second, accept a bytes 32 node right off the bat to save gas. Third, ask the registry for the resolver and, crucially, check for address 0. Fourth, call the resolver's addr method and, check for address 0 again. Finally, return address 0 explicitly if anything along the way is missing. By kicking the 0 address back up the chain to the caller when a resolution fails, your contract maintains total predictable control over permissions and payments.
But hold up, put down the deployment keys for a second. We are not done until we've tested this thing.
I know, testing. But you really need strict unit tests for 3 specific missing data scenarios here. Case 1, no resolver exists at all. Case 2, a resolver exists, but there's no actual address set inside it. And case 3, a resolver exists and returns a proper address. Do yourself a favor and never deploy an ENS helper without testing these 3 exact guard branches. You have to guarantee deterministic behavior across all your state changes. So to wrap up our schematic today, keep these core principles in mind. Registry equals discovery, resolver equals storage. Always prefer off-chain namehash computation for maximum gas efficiency. Treat address 0 explicitly as missing data, not a default. And write strict unit tests for all those missing data edge cases. Honestly, mastering this minimal helper function is your core building block for all the higher-level identity flows we're going to cover in this course.
I'll leave you with this final thought. What actually happens to your dApps user experience if your contract just blindly trusts an unregistered ENS name? Think about the massive cascading failures that could cause, especially as we head into our next lesson on front-end integrations. To dive deeper into these smart contract architectures and keep exploring Web3 with us, be sure to visit forge.college. Keep building securely, try really hard not to send your funds into the void, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.